What's going on, everybody? This is the blockchain backer bringing you the latest cryptocurrency news and analysis. Today, we'll take a look at the Bitcoin price chart and the altcoin market and the XRP price chart, as we did have some volatility yesterday. We'll also talk about the craziness of the blockchain backer NFT collection that went live yesterday that eventually had to be taken down for maintenance because the traffic was so high and so many transactions were trying to go through at the same time. They've had to correct their back-end systems to be able to support the amount of traffic that has been coming. It will go live again later today, but we'll cover that later in this video. But first, let's talk about what's going on in the markets, as we did have some volatility yesterday during the Federal Reserve's press conference announcing another 75 basis points rate hike. As is typical fashion, we saw prices swing up for Bitcoin to the upside by $400, then to the downside by $340, and the typical things that we see happen here in the stock market as well, where the Dow Jones Industrial Average fired up almost 500 points and then turned over to the downside almost 500 points. When the Federal Reserve released their statement stating that they were going to raise the federal funds rate by 75 basis points, I posted over here on Twitter, market swishes both directions on the initial reaction, slightly up currently, which is when we were in here. Jerome Powell presser up next to gauge guidance, when we usually see the real move. Then, as this meeting went on, back down to the downside, actually losing from the top to the bottom. It was down 933 points from the pop-up that it originally had. So a lot of times this can just be short and long squeezing happening here. And to no surprise, we get the same volatility here in Bitcoin and in the cryptocurrency market. Now, Jerome Powell did utter the words that a lot of people have been looking to hear. He says, at some point, it will become appropriate to slow the pace of increases. That time is coming, and it may be as soon as the next meeting or the one after that. Now, we won't go any deeper than that when it comes to the Federal Reserve, but like we see every time, whenever we have these meetings, these interest rate hikes, we get volatility happening in here. Usually we see it in the days leading up to it. It was actually pretty calm the days leading up to it, but now we've got it. And typically the days afterwards, we also have volatility as well. So keep in mind, typically after these meetings, we see some action. But still, even with Bitcoin in here, it's just residing where it's really been this whole time. So we expected that we would have a really boring October. Well, we're now in November. That's time to wait and see if we can start getting a little bit of a grind to the upside happening in here for Bitcoin. But the question is, do we have a little bit of working out here to do first? As we've operated on an amazing time schedule of exactly how endings have happened before. And if we're to continue operating at that time schedule, yeah, we're near the end of it, but doesn't say we can't still bounce around in here a little bit. Speaking of time schedules, XRP, so this is what I really want to talk about in here, is that we've been watching this for over a month at this point, comparing how the endings can happen. In particular, like with Bitcoin, we had the same structure where we had 5 waves pulling back to the support level, holding the support level for so long until we finally capitulated through it. Same thing was the case for XRP over here, 5 waves to the downside, bouncing off, holding it all the way until we capitulated through it. Now XRP has gotten itself right back in here, which was precisely what we saw happening over here for Bitcoin during this time period as well. And the question still remains on whether or not is XRP going to come down, backtest the Wyckoff accumulation breakout, and then march its way up. Or do we have something more along the lines of like what we had with Bitcoin there, where we head back into a retracement and then we come back and close it later and then we get going, so long as we're not bearish. But there's something interesting about this structure right in here, right? So if we kind of look at what was happening for Bitcoin in there, it's relatively similar happening in here, so long as it's maintaining this low setback over here on September 28th, relatively similar of what's happening in here as it's still holding these lows. The difference is this was setting higher highs at the exact same time. We haven't had that. We've still just kind of been bouncing within this range. But again, another one of the challenges of this one right in here, right? So I've tried to remain as neutral as I can, even though I would love to see it just close it out so I don't have to worry about it anymore. Like if we fired up to over $1, then I'd still have to be worrying that we have this move to come back in here and do. I'm still trying to remain neutral while we are right here because both of these things seem possible to me. But like looking at it from this perspective, you can see, hey, we're still marching with a series of higher lows. But at the same time, you've got a structure happening in here that is eerily similar to what we just saw. And, you know, markets are about learning lessons, right? So I'm going to sit here and say I have learned my lesson on this one for sure. And that's what's going on in here. So typically, I'd be sitting here saying, hey, look, you know what? This looks like a fantastic crash, retrace, reaccumulation. You know, a pop to the upside looks great. But there's something very eerily about this particular formation that we have happening right in here And I'll get all of this off the screen in here, switches to a smaller time frame so the bars are a little bit bigger, but does it look in any way familiar to what we may have already seen just recently? And so as we can see, it's really kind of the same thing here, right? The initial break and then 5 waves down, a bounce back up, and then kind of consolidating here at these levels in here. Now, is it ready to go ahead and break down as we saw happen last time? And a lot of times you got to take these things into context, right? Well, this is a much bigger time frame. This has already been extremely exhausted and it's butting up against a resistance right in here right now. So are the contexts the same? I would say no. But are the structures incredibly similar? I would say yes. The challenge with this as well was like what we saw with Tron, right? This is Tron for all of 2021 and 2022. Still to this date has not taken out that low down in there with a crash, retrace, reaccumulation happening in here. However, XRPs did break through it. But if you were Tron, you're pretty much still just sitting right in here just like this. So I'm pretty much on the edge of my seat in here. Which one are we going to be getting here for XRP? And like I've said, picking short-term direction is not really of interest to me. For this, it's helping me kind of formulate my bigger view on if we're going to just be doing some type of retracement to head back down. Or if we get something kind of happening right now, does that set us up to be able to have a more healthier run and not just have some type of retrace? So we're still waiting on that, but I wanted to show you those different things so you could see that even this shorter term structure happening in here is just like this big one was up in here. But even if it slaps that 37, 39 cent area, I still see reasons to be optimistic looking here at the Bitcoin dominance chart. As we've been watching still, look at the right side of the screen. Everything is green for the most part. Most of it is outperforming the one here at the bottom, which is Bitcoin. So that's going to be represented here in the Bitcoin dominance as the altcoin market outperforms Bitcoin. And again, if we're in this structure, if this structure is true, we are, I would think, in this moment. But that's for each person to decide, right? I hear it all the time. Blockchain backer, so you don't know anything. Look at these two charts. Decide. Do you think it is or isn't? It's up to you. I'm just finding the data and showing it to you. So does it look right? It looks ridiculously familiar to me. So hopefully we are in that moment. Historically, when this happens, it's happening as Bitcoin's going into a retracement. And it's been a little while since we've looked at it like this, right? But if the Bitcoin dominance is falling, if the altcoin market is running, which is what has historically happened in those scenarios. So if the Bitcoin dominance does break into a new low and starts crumbling, that's typically not marked by Bitcoin crashing and everything just staying still. While technically it could mean that. That's just not what has ever happened. Anytime there's a big breakdown in the Bitcoin dominance, it has been because the altcoin market is running heavily. If we are about to see some type of big breakdown in the Bitcoin dominance, is there anything happening over here in the structure of the altcoin market that signifies like that could be coming, where something big is coming for the altcoin market? And we'll dive more into this in the coming days. But, we've talked about this a lot too, like what topping structures can look like, your parabolic rise followed by your initial crash, and then your attempt to set one new high and then failure and then coming back down to capitulate. We looked through Bitcoin in 2017. We've looked at Ethereum in 2016, 2017. This is nearly a year for Ethereum in here as we had the parabolic rise, initial crash, and then the one attempt at new high and then capitulation. Well, look at where we are at this point right now as we're here. If this is true, if we're at the ending of it all, would some type of big rise in the altcoin market lead to a fall in the dominance? I would sure think so. And so what do we have to finish this off? You have just like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now trying to get a breakout. So, this is pretty clear here, right? You go take out these lows down in here at 490 billion. You got problems. You got even bigger problems than just that. Then you finally do actually crack through the 200-week moving average, which it's been able to maintain. But even in here, there you go, right? Below the 200-day moving average. It was a clear crack through the 200-day moving average. Look where we are with the whole market right now. So, you can count all the things we've talked about with Bitcoin that look optimistic, but even over here on the altcoin market cap, it shows the similarities of what has happened at the final phases here before just a kind of a break actually ends up coming in here. Looking at a whole lot more things that we talked about earlier this week with the 50 and the 100 week also crossing over here in the altcoin market. That's the same story of what happened last cycle. Looking at all the different parameters in here, indicators to see how oversold we've gotten. The same, you look at the MACD, look at it on just a giant time frame, like the monthly time frame. Look at this moment right here, February of 2019. By the time we had flipped, boom, the bottom had already been in. And think of it in the terms of the bull run as well, right? By the time it started to flip, topping was happening in here, right? So you can look at big time frames and say, do we see the things that we need to be seeing here on big time frames to look for with the bottom? Sure looks like it. Even still on a big time frame, looking at the weekly chart, are we seeing things that we need to see for a bottom to be coming in? Sure looks like it. And then structurally, do we have the structure set up for what these types of bottoms can look like? And it sure looks like it. It's just this last moment of clean break. That's what we're still all just waiting on. And of course, it's been a challenge to wait on because we've technically kind of been in this area for about 2 weeks here on the altcoin market. And with Bitcoin ranging in here since October 25th. And XRP since September 23rd. But I thought I'd show the interesting setup I see happening here in the altcoin market collectively, and then show you the reasons why it's of interest to me. And it's got to do with all the things we've talked about, with Bitcoin being the most oversold in history, hitting the 786 retracement. The 50-week, 100-week moving average is crossing. We've already got the capitulation fractal that has already played out. You have all those big things on the bigger time frames. And I take those, so when we're talking about context, right? I take all those things into consideration and then say, now does our setup look similar to reversal? Because we could sit here and apply this stuff in here in a different context. And would it make any sense? No, we would need to have the bigger time frame context be similar. And we do, right? So we've had everything happen of just complete capitulation, along with all the indicators doing the same things they've done after capitulation has already occurred. Now looking at short-term time frame price action, are we mimicking that of what the reversal of what happens when reversals occur? And we're kind of at that last phase where what happened, just a big breakout. And what would happen if we did have one breakout just like that? We'd probably see a whole lot of excitement in the market. And so are there any things happening in the market like that yet? Has anybody kind of shown their hand already? And one of them might be Doge. So obviously everybody's favorite meme coin to hate on, but it does also represent willingness of retail investors to kind of YOLO. So I'm optimistic on that, just waiting for a move to happen. Whether that means it's in here for some time is impossible to predict. And a lot of times, like we say, narratives show up when they're supposed to. But those are all the things that I see, from the bigger perspective indicators to the smaller time frame setups to even having the Bitcoin dominance set up in a manner that would support that happening. But right now, we wait. But a lot of this ties back to what we were just saying about with XRP, right? You sit here and you say, hey, look, this fractal looks incredibly similar that's happening in here. If we stretch it out on a big enough time frame on here, it looks just like what we already went through back in here, where we look so similar. But at the same time, are we in the same context? No, not unlike the big time frame stuff. We're not in any way in the same context. We're just taking the same fractal and stretching it out. The context isn't similar, right? This is after a big capitulation move. This is a bounce out, a breakout of a Wyckoff accumulation. We're right in here. Is the context the same as this? I would argue that it's not exactly the same context. So that makes it very challenging in here to say this is the same thing, even though they look eerily similar to each other. But like when we're trying to look at these bigger time frame things, we have to say, well, is there a bigger context happening in here? And like we're showing here on the weekly time frame, you have the same context of what has happened when bottoms have already come in on the weekly time frame, and you have the context on the monthly time frame to show that the bottom has already come in. Will this time be different? Of course, that's always possible, but how people can decide one is more likely than the other when you're going based on this time being different, I tend to find that usually it's the scariest bet to make, thinking that it's going to be different. So I'm not a fortune teller. I just spend an absurd amount of time in these charts trying to find the confluences in there to say, how have bottoms come in? What do the structures look like? What do the indicators look like? What is price behavior like? And everything we've had happen in here mimics that of what bottoms have looked like in the altcoin market, in Ethereum, and in Bitcoin throughout history on big time frames, monthly time frame, weekly time frame, yearly time frame. We've mimicked all those things. Will it do it? We'll find out, but I'm trying to show you everything that I can find to explain why I'm optimistic about it. Question is, do we still have waiting we have to do? And after we had the Fed meeting yesterday, how much volatility is there going to be this week? Because historically, we tend to see volatility for the remainder of the week. But all right, we'll move on and talk about the craziness that happened yesterday as the blockchain backer NFT art collection was released over there on XRP. It was actually so wild and so chaotic over there, they had to shut down the mint or pause the minting of the collection because the traffic was so high. Here's their tweet from on XRP. We are taking the BC Backer mint page offline due to maintenance. As soon as it's fixed, we'll update you all. The amount of traffic for his mint was extraordinary. Big shout out to BCB. Only a positive thing. Stay tuned. So I've been in communication with them. It is going to come back online again today. And I could see what was going on yesterday. I could see all the refreshing and the transactions that were attempting to go through. There were so many people clicking the exact same button at the exact same time. I was just watching it as like 95, 99% of transactions were getting denied. And of course, I'm over there sitting there chatting with on XRP, being like, man, this is crazy. This is crazy. I could see all the denials happening in here. I'm like, it was like a mad dash. It was unbelievable. You know, putting this whole thing together, it was like I could come up with all the scenarios on how everything could go wrong. And the one I didn't come up with was that it would do so amazing that we would break it. Which I posted earlier in the day. We're breaking it, boys, as they had mentioned that they were experiencing record-breaking traffic. About 1,000 people are pressing the same buttons at the same time. It could take a couple of tries for transactions to go through. We're working on performance heavily. Hard to test it in DevNet and is expected with new tech. Stay tuned. So this is just kind of the growing pains we're having with NFTs being on the XRP ledger, seeing this type of traffic being handled and how these platforms have to modify the way things are going to improve performance. And well, not only were we breaking it, eventually we broke it and they had to take it down. But it's going to be coming back today. So it's going to come back online today. And I am very interested to see the mad dash again. You guys have said so many kind words about how much you like the art. I really appreciate it. This was such a long process in the making. Of course, it couldn't have been done without the collaboration with Jude Hey2 over here on Twitter. Absolutely phenomenal work. He posted a nice thread over here kind of showing all of them so you can see them in better HD quality than with how it's being displayed out there right now. So eventually you'll be able to see, once they have their displays down, that you'll see HD of all of these for your NFTs. It's not just going to be a JPEG GIF. It's going to have the MP4 of high quality, high rendered HD in there. We're just waiting for that to get to that moment where that's displayed, but that should be coming relatively soon. And I think they did the right thing by taking it down. I know a lot of people were having problems yesterday as it just kept going. It's kind of like more things were building up on themselves. And it's kind of like, wait, we got to stop this and get everything running really smooth and then open the gates back up again. And I think it was the right move to make. And I know I've been talking with them. They're going to open the gates back up again today. So I will keep that in communication over here on Twitter. And then I'll probably post like a YouTube short or something like that when I know more information and I have a time. But there is a link posted to it over here on my Twitter. This does take you directly to the Launchpad, where eventually there will be a button down here that says mint for each of these. If you're just right here on their homepage, nft.onxrp, see the blockchain backer right here, click explore, but you're not actually in the mint page right here. So this is the secondary market right in here. You click mint on Launchpad right there, and then this will get you into the different ones that you can mint. And eventually the mint button will come back and I will communicate that to you guys when it does. But props to on XRP because this was a crazy moment. You know, took a gamble here by being one of the first ones out the gates to do this. There was no type of like whitelist or pre-sale or anything like that to go with this art. It was something we worked on for 8 months up front with our own time and energy. So it was the first opportunity for anybody to get their hands on it. And I couldn't have imagined that the traffic would have been at the level that it was. And on XRP was sitting there every time I'm messaging them, they were sitting there replying back to me and communicating with me. And I know that they're doing their best to get it all fixed. So very cool. I'm glad we're going to get it back up and running today. I'm sure it will go better today. It's definitely been a long 2 weeks for me. I think I've worked like 18-hour days every day for the last 2 weeks. And now at these last like 4 days running on, 5 hours of sleep each night, and it's starting to stack up. But we just got to get our way to the weekend. But it's unquestionably been a very exciting week for the XRP ledger and all this stuff going on. So I'll keep in touch with you guys whenever I get new information on that. I'll post it here on YouTube and I'll post it over there on Twitter. Otherwise, I'm getting this video out really early. Lots of volatility in the market after the Federal Reserve interest rate hike meeting. They did communicate that the slowdown in rate hikes will be coming. Not saying that they're going to pivot, but a slowdown will be coming either in the next meeting or the meeting after that. We'll see how volatility continues throughout the rest of the week, which is historically pretty volatile after these meetings. Crypto's bigger setup on the bigger time frame looks great to me. I tried to show you all the things that I do see. XRP, still coin flip on there. What's it going to do? 37, 39 cents? Or is it going for breakout? And the Bitcoin dominance still playing out like we had hoped it would, waiting for more follow through in there too. Otherwise, I hope that you guys have been having a wonderful week so far. Thank you for all the interest you guys have had over there on the Blockchain Backer digital art collection. Insane. Hopefully things run a whole lot smoother today when it gets back up. I'll let you know when that is. Otherwise, I'm going to wrap this thing up. Thank you so much for watching. If you could, please like this video and give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you could be notified of when I create new content and when I go live. As always, this is not investment advice and I am not a financial advisor. But if you ever need a pick-me-up or a little bit of reassurance, just remember that the blockchain backers got your back. Have a good one.